Hey, so this reading is going to be just a look at your energy, but we're going to do it from an emotional standpoint. I'm going to talk about how you may feel. I'm going to talk as if you feel this way, right? I'm going to speak as if I'm channeling you. And so, because this is general, it might be pretty tricky. So, don't take it too personally, even though I am attempting to do a general reading based on how you feel. You may not feel all these ways that I mentioned, right? But if there's enough of it that's resonating as true for you, or if it activates you, then it is meant for you. Now, if it activates you, it means that it's going to bring up something uncomfortable or something that you weren't aware was there until I kind of pointed out, you know? And I think that's the most helpful thing that could happen in a reading like this, right? Because the reason I'm doing this is because I've noticed that I'm at a point in my journey of healing / understanding myself where some of my good coping mechanisms, meaning I'm functioning just fine, utilizing some of the coping mechanisms that I have. However, they are there in place as a way to avoid having to feel something that I don't want to feel on a very subconscious level, meaning I'm not aware of it. So, as I am becoming aware of this, I'm working with a life coach. She's so brilliant and beautiful, and I'm so grateful for her because she provides a safe container and a level of understanding and kindness that I really need to unpack this stuff. So I want to extend that space to you. And hopefully, if you've been watching my readings, you understand that I do what I do sometimes very bluntly, but also with unconditional love, with understanding, and never with judgment or shaming or blaming or saying that it's wrong, because I don't believe that any of this is wrong. This is just a human experience, and sometimes we do need the reflection of somebody else's perspective or an experience with somebody else to allow us to see ourselves and to see parts of ourselves that we weren't fully aware of, and that it may be time to become aware of so that we can move through and integrate our experience from having that perspective. So that's the goal of this. So it may be comforting, it may be enlightening, it may be reassuring, it may be the stuff you need to heal from. But whatever it is, it's meant to be helpful. So only take what's helpful to you. And we have 4 choices. And these cards will be part of the reading at the end. I'm going to use the Astrology Oracle bucket, which of course has more energy than just the astrology in it now, because I've been adding to it as I feel called to do. And we'll look at the cards last, probably, or amidst the little story that we tell about your emotional life. So this is going to be pick 1, pick 2, pick 3, pick 4. You may want to take a deep breath. And you'll use your own intuition to decide if one or more of these have a reflection to offer you. And let's get started with pick number 1. Okay, pick number 1. Let's take a look. What the Astrology Oracle has to offer us. 3 days. So you are currently integrating something new. Something happened 3 days ago, or you're in the middle of the 3-day period where you're integrating something new. And it may be difficult to integrate. There may be part of you that wants to avoid it. And you may also feel like you're coming to a point where it's kind of getting old to keep avoiding this thing by using substances. I think you're allowing yourself to see and feel this thing with the perspective of not just yourself but others. Something shifted in the way that you perceive that allowed you to see a bigger picture view. And I think it hurt to allow this bigger picture view, but the result was that you feel more whole, you feel more capable and more, it lent towards your mastery. Okay? So I think that you were looking at something from a perspective that was very disempowered, and maybe in the understanding of it or the bigger picture view that you gained, where you could release yourself from it, it was also very painful to see that you had been doing it despite this other thing always being an option. So I do want to say that remember to allow yourself to feel that you were not wrong. But this new understanding has allowed you to realize that you have even more available to you than you thought before. And this is because you've been allowing yourself to feel emotions more. I think that Aquarius is the water bearer, and Oshun is an ocean deity. And so I think emotions has become a bigger part, and maybe you had been avoiding them by using alcohol or something like that. But I think this is the beginning of your mastery, and with this as part of your operating system that is not being shunned or denied or suppressed, you will allow yourself to dream bigger because you will see how it is possible. I think that you feel what's true to you now. And also this is affecting your partnerships. This may have allowed you to kind of light a fire under you towards a partnership that you've been longing for. Maybe you're ready to allow it into your existence, and this is the fated time to do it. So you may have been drowning out a desire that you had for a partnership, because in the not honoring of your feelings, you were not honoring the longing that you had for this partnership. It was a partnership in particular or in general. So now that you're not trying to avoid feeling that thing, you've accepted it, it's there, it's with you as a feeling, you're able to be in the present moment. And you're able to understand things much more easily because you have the biggest picture view. And now you'll be able to take action where you were not able to before. Before, your action was centered around an avoidance or a coping with the avoidance of the emotion. And now you will be able to act in the direction of the biggest dream available to you. Wow, how beautiful. So let's see what this card says. It says, to be enlightened, lighten up. And see how we've got the bananas here with the rainbow. I love the rainbow. That's a rainbow bridge. And a rainbow bridge is taking a very low, dense way of experiencing things through your perspective, which would be if you were limiting yourself in the 3D and felt lack or victim mentality, that would be a very dense, heavy way to feel. And then you can take the rainbow bridge to look at the bigger picture view, which is adopting a growth mindset, essentially, so that you understand that things are happening for you, not to you. And then you can utilize the lessons that it brought forth to you, what you've learned from the situation, and go forth with it to expand into the more limitless possibilities that are actually available. And so lightening up involves, shedding the dense view that you were looking at life through, but also allowing yourself to have a lot more fun, because I think it takes a strict regimen to keep yourself in the box, from feeling those things that you didn't want to feel. that that meant you had to control your surroundings. You had to make sure you weren't going to be around people who would provoke you or poke you or expect more of you. You know, you probably kept your world a bit small or like very predictable, in order to keep that being the case. But now, this actually allows you to lighten up in the way that you can address life more like the perspective of a child, being curious, willing to go into experiences and have them for what they are, not afraid of your own ability to handle what they feel like, essentially. How beautiful. And bananas also remind me of like when you slip on a banana peel. It's like this like goofy thing, right? That maybe a clown would do, but it's like, you know, it's also fun to kind of not be predictable, right? To have something kind of throw you off, because it looks funny sometimes when people slip on a banana peel, as long as they don't get hurt, right? Like, that would be funny. So it's like lighten up and kind of find the humor in what's happened here if you can, where you can. Okay, pick one. That is the information I have for you to reflect on. Remember, only take it if it's helpful for you. And I want to thank you for spending your time with me. We're going to end your reading there and move on to pick number 2. Okay, pick number 2. Okay. Pick 2. When this 1 week kind of flew out, I heard that song. I think the Bare Naked Ladies sing it. It's been 1 week since you looked at me. Cupido. So that's Cupid's arrow. Maybe you're shot with Cupid's arrow. Something started making sense. There's some opposition and some free will and some exact timing. Something happened and right at the precise time it was meant to, and it offered you this ability to use your own free will to apply yourself to a different view than you had been accustomed to. Maybe even trying on the opposite view in order to balance something out. It's like, oh, I see this from a different angle now than I used to. So now I've seen both sides, and both sides seem to be true. So I can see now that this energy was balanced out in you because of this. So Sophia is one of the creators of Earth here. She's the embodiment of wisdom. And so I think that you were able to embody this wisdom into your psyche. It was just so big and in your face, like this understanding. It was like literally played out and spelled out for you by God. And so I think part of this is like that you felt really a lot of love and felt held by the universe when this happened. Something where you had been projecting. So you saw that whatever you had been seeing in someone else only was actually existing in you too. Or you saw that whatever you thought about someone else was actually the opposite was true. Or the opposite was also true. Whatever it was, it balanced out a situation. And then you were able to see this new story. This puts you on the precipice of a whole big change, a whole new life, really. A different way to live on Earth has now been spurred. And I think you do feel the freedom that came with that. And so maybe that even sparked some curiosity on like, what else were you wrong about? What else could you balance out to be free from? Yeah, you really started reflecting on what it is you think. That whatever this is, it happened in your hometown, or it also made you reflect on your hometown. Maybe even how you feel about your hometown, why you're close or far from your hometown. Um, yes, okay. Reflecting on the dynamic that kept you thinking that perspective, the first one in the first place. I think that may have been the case as well. Let's see what this card says. You are perfectly imperfect. Oh, I love it. Love it, love it. Look at the stars. Okay, so whatever you saw in the other person, it exists in you. And it's not wrong whether it's in them or you, you know? And having the perspectives that you've had, both projecting it and embodying it and agreeing to be it, are all for your experience, the story that you're living on Earth. And sometimes we know what we do want by knowing what we don't want. And when we understand that both things are true and that we can choose which to live by, it opens up this huge, like, bigger way to live on Earth. So if everything was perfect, if you were just like fitting in the box, if everybody was fitting in the box and doing as they were told, and just like cookie cutter beings that did exactly what was expected of them at all times, and what was deemed morally right, then this would kind of be boring and pointless, because actually I think that living on Earth is an exploration of all of those things. You know, who would decide what is morally right? Because obviously we know that there is a vast majority of people who have different perspectives, because they have different lived lives, who think different things are right and different things are wrong. And so what is good to realize is those things are right or wrong for them until they're not. Because all things are true, right? Okay, so you really freed yourself from something, and it was a moment, I think, in time within the past week that really kind of shifted things for you, and maybe even set you on this roller coaster ride of all kinds of things unraveling. So what a beautiful thing. And this is a card that also reminds you not to be blaming or shaming yourself. Those are old paradigms. Those are old ways that were programmed into human populace so that we wouldn't be free, that we wouldn't go willy-nilly, that we would actually take the time to learn what we needed to learn before we go free. You know what I mean? Like I always kind of reflect on how disempowered I was earlier on in my life, and now I feel fully capable and understand that I am my own creator of life. And I tend to think that I needed that limitation and that kind of imprisonment to really appreciate what freedom is, and to really show it the due respect that I need to have for my ability to create, and the power that I have to contribute to what my life actually is. Because there are consequences, and we do affect other people, and I want to know that I affect other people, because if I start out and I start doing things and I don't pay attention to the fact that, you know, other people are involved here, like I want, then I may do harm that I'm not aware of, right? So I think that being compassionate is rooted in some of these limitations that we experience. So I think, you know, for me in particular, I like to understand that all my limitations were for a purpose, and it did make me a more compassionate, kind, conscientious person. And I understand what it is to hurt, and I understand that I don't want to hurt people, you know? Okay, so how beautiful. And also it doesn't mean that I'm wrong when I do hurt people, because it's not my intention, and I do need to learn what hurts people and what doesn't hurt people, you know? It's like, if I don't have the experience and it's not okay for me to make a mistake, then I could go into one of those silly coping mechanisms that humans have used, which is denial, or kind of just going all in on the destruction, both of which are karmic patterns that I believe that I've gotten myself out of and don't care to go back in, only because I've lived them. You know, it's painful existence. So I'm content with not being with being perfectly imperfect. And this is your invitation to recognize that you are too, or to invite you to be. And remember, this is just information to reflect on. So take what is useful and helpful to you and leave the rest for somebody else. And I want to thank you for spending your time with me. And perhaps we'll see you in another reading. Hello, pick 3. I'm just going to pause you while I shuffle the bucket. Hi, pick 3. I haven't said this before, but what I noticed about these readings so far is they're definitely not about what you feel. They're more about what I think. So if that's going to be disappointing for you, then I just wanted to give you a warning. So we've got Cancer, nostalgic, mothery, nurturing energy. And we've got surrender, control, something in the day-to-day life. A growth mindset, meaning this is happening for me, not to me. And completed. Okay, so something was out of your control, in that someone or something you cared about, or some way that you wanted your mother to care about you, was not coming to fruition. An expectation was not met, and I think that you had to come to terms with that. You accepted that, and then you understood that there was something that you had learned from having had that situation be the case. I think this uncovered a weakness that you may have had in yourself, in your operating system, that was there at the foundation. And you may still be in the midst of integrating this change in kind of your foundation. Like, it takes 3 days to integrate any of these changes that we come to. It may have come very suddenly, but you definitely understand that you've been healed. Something has been healed, and you gained wisdom on a situation. And this is saying that this was the time for you to do it. Like, so there's no, like, beating self up for not having done it sooner, or seen things from a different perspective sooner. And that's simply because there's certain timing that these things need to happen. We are a population of humans that interact with each other, and through our interactions, we help each other grow through inspiration and things like that. So we cannot, like, gain the biggest picture view without first paying our dues, so to speak, right? Like, there was some sort of reason that you had to be in a certain perspective when you encountered certain experiences or people along your path. So it just wasn't time to have the fullest understanding yet until now, or a fuller understanding. And now you can take this sort of lie, or this like manipulative way of being that you may have been utilizing to cope with what you thought was the case, and raise your standards, so to speak, and, like, come up with a new way that's inspired, but that will be more healthy and new and fresh and able to flourish, given what you now know. And so you may have either already done this or still be in the process of taking the deep dive into your own psyche, into your own foundation, looking back at, after you've acknowledged this, maybe look back at why, validate why you had been operating in that manner, why it was like that way in the first place. Accept it fully, and then love the part of yourself that has coped in that way. This is something that you may want to communicate about to others, and also it may inspire you to create something new, because I think that this allows you to see that there are limitless possibilities. I can see how this kind of ties into the first 2 piles in different ways. So if you were inspired to listen to those piles, they kind of go into the same sort of energy from a different angle. So probably I'll do a little clearing before I do the last pile. But basically, this is like you're stepping into limitless possibilities. You have the ability to create from the wisdom you've gained, from all of the experiences you've had, because you adopted the growth mindset, and because you surrendered control, and because you cared, and because you raised your standards on any lower density ways of behaving that may have been rooted in a survival during childhood, during your upbringing. How beautiful. Let's see what this card says. Every cycle is a higher opportunity. Yeah, right? So we talked about how you couldn't heal this, right away or sooner because you had to be at a certain stage at a certain time to maybe activate somebody else in their stuff, right? So it's like, this is just more confirmation of that. It's like, yes, whatever layer you're at is the right layer for you to be at, and there's something for you at each layer. Like, each level that you complete is an accomplishment to be celebrated, and also provide opportunity to grow, learn, and even face it again from a more wise place in the future, if that should be the case, So it's just kind of like getting into that flow, surrendering the understanding and knowing that not necessarily what goes around comes around, but like, if it comes around, you'll be okay. If it comes around, it has something to teach you. If it comes around, you can handle it. If it comes around, it's happening for you, not to you. If it comes around, it's coming around just at the right time. If it comes around, you may not see it coming. Yeah, really nice. Okay, pick 3. Remember, this is just information to reflect on. It's meant to be helpful, so just take what's helpful for you and leave the rest for someone else. I'm going to end your reading there, and thank you for spending your time with me. Okay, let's pick number 4. Let's just do a little Palo Santo pick number 4, because the first 3 piles were sort of tied together. Not exactly the same, and they could have been, 3 different energies, but they just kind of had the same outcome. So I'm just lighting the Palo Santo right now. And it looks like it's just coming to the point of catching fire. And I'm gonna do the bucket without setting any of those on fire. I'll just put that there for a second while I don't want to burn my board here because I like my board. Okay. Well, let's take a look. Not just at the Palo Santo, but at your cards. This is talking about being in a cycle of doing the same thing over and over again. Now, for the purpose of gaining wisdom, there may be somebody in your life who is in the position of being able to help you out or give you a forewarning or a bigger picture view. But it will require you to be willing to look under the surface of what's in your subconscious. There may be some place that you're lying to yourself, like you're telling yourself that you are obligated to keep doing this thing. When there's another view that says, actually, you're doing this thing because you're avoiding this thing, and, you know, you're doing it over and over again, so you're getting good practice. You're practiced at being resilient, being strong, being self-sacrificing, being consistent, you know. So those are all valuable things, but there is a freedom, and you may have reached the time where you want to access that freedom. So notice the pattern, right? You may have already noticed the pattern and just, you know, resigned to it. There's 6 months or 180 days is a time period around this. Somebody else is being dishonest, okay? So it's not just you lying to yourself, that's being mirrored back to you in your reality. And I think if you had somebody come to mind when I first said that, you will know who. And it feels like doing the same thing over and over again, keeping in the pattern, feels like the easy thing to do. Because it feels like it'll be difficult for you to break away, but not because of you, but because of you worried about other people. And actually, you might be filling yourself with stories about how it's going to affect other people. I think that was based on fears, the thing that's in your subconscious. It's like the child version of you was put into a box and said, you know, don't disrupt us other people by doing that thing you want to do, because that's wrong and bad. So now as an adult, you've kept that cycle and you've said, oh, I don't want to do things that disrupt a bunch of other people. I'm going to just keep doing the thing that I'm supposed to do. Okay? But in actuality, if you dug into this a little bit, you'd see that that's a story that you've been repeating since childhood, and it's no longer true. So I think just realizing and kind of digging around that deception a little bit is going to easily let you see, you know, the bigger picture view. And also be thankful for the things that you've learned while being in the cycle, because they were still valuable things. You can recognize yourself as a healer, because as you break out of this cycle and deal with all the parts of yourself that feel certain things about it, that is your initiation into being a healer, right? And you may have even noticed a pattern of dishonest other people, because it's been, you know, that you've allowed this to happen because you were just kind of going by the coping mechanism you adopted earlier on without looking at the details and kind of dissecting it and seeing if it's still true today. But that's normal, right? That's how humans work. You were trying to do this to protect yourself from whatever it was that your parental unit or caretaker presented as the risk for not doing it. Maybe a certain level of shunning or disgust or punishment, you know, shaming, blaming. You were avoiding all those things. And one of the ways you may have coped was even to pretend that you don't care. You know? Did you practice, like, pretending that you don't care, showing a straight face even when you did care? Letting people think that you were cold when you weren't? Well, it looks like it's the time, you know? It's like you let yourself look like narcissistic, like you only cared about yourself, when in actuality, you are a very caring person. And so the first thing to do is give that care to yourself. What does that little child version of you that was told they can't do what they're supposed to do for their own good, for their own highest good, that they have to worry about making sure not to disrupt others, what does that part of you need? what would be the loving thing to do for that part of you? Can you honor that part of you, how that part of you feels, and also reassure that part of you that you have your back when other people do get upset, when you have to make the changes that you make to break out of the cycle. Okay, so this is something that your soul wanted to experience. You are equipped to handle it. It is a very scary, difficult thing, but only for that child version of you. You are the bigger version of you who has handled and traversed all kinds of difficult things up until now. You've survived it all. You are very capable. You have all the skills you need. This is the time. And look at this. There are no wrong turns. So if that part of you would kind of switch from saying like, oh, I have to do it this way, to then hearing me say, no, don't do it that way. And if that part of you would then adopt this idea that you were wrong, no, it's not that you were wrong. Because remember, staying in that cycle taught you a lot of things about yourself. We look at it like it was practice. Okay, because during the time that you kept up in that cycle, you learned a lot of things that you're going to need to use to grow and go forward from here. Okay, so there are no wrong turns, because in the experience you also learned the skills you need to move on from the experience. No matter how many times you stayed in the experience, no matter how many times you repeated the cycle, no matter how many times you ignored the details, there are no wrong turns. So it's not about beating yourself up, it's about full acceptance. And then loving the self for all the ways that the self feels. Whether that self wants to self-blame, self-sabotage, or feel guilty, love all the parts of self that feels those things. And accept that those are the ways to feel. Like, if that's the way you feel, that's the way you feel. It doesn't mean that what you're doing is wrong. It means that that feeling needs your presence. And once that feeling has your presence, you may feel some way different. It's just that is a repeating cycle that was used to avoid feeling that. And now it's time to feel that so you can move through it. You'll be able to see beyond it once you spend the time to be present with it. Okay, pick 4. What a beautiful experience you're having. Growing as a human on Earth, in Earth School, learning and overcoming, right? Okay, so remember, this is just information to reflect on. It's meant to be helpful, so only take what is helpful for you. The number 27 could be significant to you. And I want to thank you for spending your time with me. Perhaps we'll see you in the next one.